what I'll go through now is a complete filter change on the RO H3500. First thing you want to do, like always, is shut off the feed water. And again, in this situation, I've extended the lines from underneath the sink so we can put the RO and the storage tank up on the countertop for easier access, and so we can get a good video shot of it. Once your feed water is shut off, you want to shut off your storage tank and then depressurize the RO. I'm going to start with the dual function carbon pre-filter, which factory recommendation should be replaced every 6 months to a year. Once you get the sump removed from the sump housing, dump out the excess water, remove the filter, remove the O-ring, wipe off and inspect the O-ring here. You also want to clean out the cartridge for the sump. Some warm soapy water. And a large bottle brush. Use a little lubricant on the O-ring. Open up your new filter. You want to be careful with this filter. It is a 1 micron dirt and sediment carbon block. The inside of this cartridge is a carbon block. If it gets dropped, could crack the carbon block, and of course water travels the least resistance. The water will flow through the crack and it may not get the proper filtering that this cartridge is capable of. Once it's reinstalled, at the bottom you'll see a port where the cartridge seats. At this time you can also do some sanitizing, but we'll do that in a later video. Right now we're just focusing on replacing the filters. And also check the sump housing here. Wipe it out and make sure the threads and everything are nice and clean. Reinstall the sump and make sure it's nice and snug. At this point we do recommend that this pre-filter be rinsed. It's a carbon block so you won't get a lot of dirt and fines, but it is a good idea to pre-rinse it and pre-fill the housing. How you do this is on the back of the system. On the sump it'll say in. This is where your feed water goes in. On the back side it'll say out. This is where the feed water exits the sump. Disconnect this line. Just attach an additional piece of line. Run that to the sink. And then turn your feed supply back on. Slowly. This This will purge the air, fill the sump, and rinse the pre-filter. This normally should only take a couple of minutes. Shut off your feed water supply. Disconnect your auxiliary line here. And since we disconnected this line, I'd inspect it to make sure to see if it's chewed up or anything. We don't want a water leak once we reinstall it. Depending on the condition of the line, you can cut off any nicked or frayed pieces, then reinstall the line. The next filter that should be replaced every 6 months to the year is a prolonged contact filter. It's the small housing up on top. Our feed water is already turned off, so we can go ahead and disassemble this from the RO. The replacement prolonged contact filter from Heg will come similar to this here. You will need to reuse the elbows. They can simply just be removed from this housing. Remove the existing Teflon tape. Check to make sure the threads aren't damaged and the O-ring appears to be intact inside. Put some fresh Teflon tape on there. Typically just 1 or 2 wraps is sufficient. And then reinsert your elbows into the new prolonged contact filter. On the prolonged contact filter itself, you'll find the word flow and an arrow. This is indicating the flow of water through the housing, and it's very important that when replacing this that you pre-rinse the prolonged contact filter. The easiest way to do that is to disconnect your feed supply here. Following the arrow and the flow of water, you'll reconnect it. Point the opposite elbow towards a drain or a bucket, and then turn your feed water supply on very slowly. This will purge the housing because it is filled with GAC carbon, any carbon fines and air that are in there. As you can see, this will run black and foamy for a little while. It's a real good idea to just set that in the sink and let it run for maybe 5, 10, possibly 15 minutes if you have the time. While that's rinsing, you can inspect your lines here that we disassembled. Make new cuts. And this is to just help avoid any potential leaks that may come. Once the prolonged contact filter is flushed, the water will run pretty consistent and clear. Shut off your feed supply. Disconnect it. Reconnect your feed to the in port of the pre-filter. And then we're ready to reassemble the prolonged contact filter back onto the RO. Again, you want to watch the direction or the flow of the water through this. Reconnect your lines, install it back onto the RO with your red locking clips. The importance of pre-rinsing the prolonged contact filter is really to protect the permeate pump. When you're flushing and you see the discolored water, the air, the spitting and sputtering that's coming out, if you were to just put this back on the H3500, turn the feed water on, all of that discolored water, carbon fines, and air are going to go directly into the permeate pump, and that could potentially cause it to stall. So it's very important to pre-rinse the prolonged contact filter before putting it back on the RO and putting the RO into full operation. The last filter that we recommend be changed every 6 months to a year is the carbon post filter. Again, verify that your feed water's off. Remove the sump. Drain off any water. Discard the cartridge. Check your O-ring. And with this O-ring especially, even if you suspect there's a nick or a pinch, it's best just to replace it to avoid potential water leaks. You want to clean and rinse out your sump housing. Once your sump's clean, lubricate your O-ring. Reinstall it. Open up the new post filter. Install it. Check the sump housing. And reinstall your sump. With this filter, again, it's very important to rinse it as much as possible because it is a large gap cartridge. It has a lot of carbon fines and dust. The best way to do it is using the water that's in the storage tank. Simply turn the storage tank on. The slower the better. The water will run, fill up the post filter, and line up to the spigot. Once your storage tank's on, you relieve the pressure and the discoloration with the spigot. You'll want to be careful with this. There is a lot of back pressure. Again, the storage tank is going to be pushing that water out at whatever the feed pressure is. So you will get a lot of spitting and sputtering and discoloration. Once the majority of the air and the spitting and the sputtering is worked out, you can flip the handle up and just let it run. I recommend depleting the whole storage tank, flushing through the filter. Once your storage tank is depleted, your pre-filter should be sufficiently rinsed. Next we can go on to check the storage tank itself. I want to shut off the spigot. Shut the storage tank off, remove the yellow line, and there may be a little pressure buildup in there. The tank feels relatively empty, but to check it, we can just point it down towards the sink and open up. Empty. And we can check the air side of the bladder tank. You want a tire gauge will work, but most of them aren't rated low enough. We're just looking for 5 to 7 psi. Sometimes a regular standard tire gauge won't read very accurately at that low of a pressure, so we use a little digital one. These can be picked up just about anywhere for $10 to $12. And our storage tank is reading 0 psi, so there's really no air. So to add air, you simply use a bicycle pump. I would recommend something a little more advanced, maybe the air compressor that plugs into your cigarette lighter, because when you're trying to put 5 to 7 psi of air in here, it takes a lot of pumping. Another way to check to make sure your diaphragm is functioning properly is if there's no air, pump air. And see if there's any air that leaks out. And we're at 6.5. So that should be sufficient for our needs. You can always release some air. If you need to. Now that the storage tank's charged, check our yellow tubing. insert the line. Leave the storage tank on. All of our filters have been replaced. The pre-filter, the post-filter, the prolonged contact filter. The filters have all been rinsed. The storage tank has been drained. The air pressure has been checked, so we can just turn on the feed pressure. You can listen at the air gap to make sure there is water going to drain. You'll want to check all the fittings, especially the ones that we disconnected and recut the lines. Make sure there's no leaks. And with the H3500, it may take a few minutes, but you'll want to check and see if you hear that clicking sound from the permeate pump. Once you've verified that there's no water leaks, the permeate pump's working, you're getting water to the storage tank. And another way to verify that there is water going to the storage tank is disconnect the line and turn on your feed pressure. And you should see a pretty consistent dribble. Once you're satisfied with everything, you can go ahead and reinstall it back underneath the sink.